tell us about herself.
Yeah, first of all, hi, Ali. Thank you so much for that introduction. And hello to everybody else. Thank you so much for joining in. My name is Krishnan. I'm an oil painter. I've been painting for about 10 years. I've also taught in the past. It's my first time at PAL. To give you a little background story, about 2016, I was diagnosed with tendonitis. And I had a long period of time where I couldn't really paint. So I had a lot of time where I was staring at my own paintings and they were all stacked up against the floor, against my walls. Think about stuff. I felt like my paintings were very colorful and I felt like they were lacking harmony. So I thought, okay, let me just start over. And I started to simplify my palette. And I reduced my palette to just 3 tubes of paint, which is blue, yellow, red, and white. I probably should have done this at the beginning, but I never did. I started with an extended palette and I came to realize that I needed more harmony. And that's how I started to work with the limited palette. So I've been working with the limited palette and mixing my own paints, so to say, for about 5 years or so. Not to say that you cannot find these colors in the store, you probably can, I just haven't looked. And for me, it's a very therapeutic process when I mix my paint. And to be honest, I've noticed that it makes my paintings stronger. They're more, I'm able to limit my values to, 4, 5 to the max. And I think that really makes for a stronger color composition. I have 2 workshops coming up. One is a limited palette, painting a landscape in a limited palette, which is towards the end of January. I believe it's on the 28th. And then I have another one coming up in February. That's a quick studies workshop where we are going to paint like studies in about 20 to 30 minutes. That's a fun workshop too.
Those are landscapes, correct?
Yes. The workshop is going to be focused on landscapes. To tell you a little bit about the first one that we're going to do, landscape painting in the limited palette, it's going to focus on the overall landscape. We are going to be talking about composition. And to show you, I have something that I just pulled out. So this is how I start. I make my composition studies like this in ink, and I'll make a lot of notes. Because sometimes I'll have an idea, but by the time I get to painting it, it's been a while. So I want to remember things that have really moved me. So I'll make notes like this with sketches. And then that will be the main basis for my composition. Of course, students or artists are welcome to make sketches the way you like. Some people use charcoal, some people use ink, a pencil, however, because everybody has a method to their madness. And I don't want you to feel uncomfortable in the workshop. So, but to tell you, we're going to explore composition. This is how I explore it. We're going to study the anatomy of a landscape. What does a typical landscape look like when you convert it into black and white? And then how we can achieve that in paint. In this case, it's going to be with a limited palette. But on a side note, if you are, very used to using your extended palette, feel free to bring that extended palette and work on your own, because I don't want you to shift. But if you really want to try the limited palette, this is a great workshop. But if you're comfortable, you know what you're doing with the extended, I can work with the extended palette too. I used to do that a lot as well. We're going to explore color harmonies with the limited palette. And one thing I would say about a limited palette is that it's basically a mindset. It teaches you how to think in terms of color temperature and the relationships between the different values. Okay, so how things are light, or how a tree is probably light or dark compared to the foreground or the background. So it's going to be more about relationships in grayscale, and then how that translates into paint. And again, you're free to use your extended palette, really. We can do both. Of course, the demo will be in a limited palette. What else? It's mainly going to be exploring relationships composition, the main anatomy of a landscape, exploring relationships and focusing on those relationships, and thinking in terms of warm and cold, in terms of temperature.
Ria, I remember, sorry to interrupt you, but I remember when we were talking about the quick studies workshop, you were saying that when you used to paint, well, you paint plein air outside, but as we all know, the sun changes and the light changes, and you were challenging yourself to be able to do these quick studies so you can capture the moment and then work on it later.
Absolutely. So with the studies workshop, which is going to happen in February, again, you're free to use your extended palette or medium, whatever that is. But again, it goes back to my tendonitis problem that I had, where I just couldn't paint, but I had to find a way to paint, because not painting was more painful than the tendonitis itself. So I had to find a way to, like, paint quickly, paint fast, and I felt I should start painting smaller. And that's how the whole idea of painting smaller. And over time, I have noticed that it's really, you will be surprised how much you can accomplish in 20 minutes. So I usually, when I go outside, I do plein air, I literally time myself for 20 minutes, and I try to make a painting as quickly as I can. And the idea is not really to get in all the detail, but the idea is to capture the essence of the landscape. It's to, if you don't mind, can I grab a painting real quick? Something
Please, I love your paintings. Grab as many as you want, Ria.
Yeah, so I did this over the weekend. These were both painted at Lake Vasona. And I told myself, I'm not going to paint the lake. I've painted that many times. So I forced myself to look somewhere else. But these were both painted literally 20 minutes. And in both the paintings, so I'll try to focus on something. In this case, I was focused on the shadow of the mountain. And in this case, I was focusing, I just loved the shadow of the trees were casting on the hill, and then the little house on the top. But to tell you, these are both 6x8. So I don't paint anything bigger than 8x10 when I go outside, especially. It's mainly 6x8. And the idea is to capture the essence. So just to show you that both of these. So, but we'll start with the quick studies. It's not a plein air workshop. It's going to be indoors, but I think you study everything indoors, you take all the knowledge, and then you go outside. And then when you go outside, you take all the knowledge you get outside, and then you bring it into the studio. So I think one helps the other. And that's going to be the quick studies. We're going to time ourselves for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then see how far we can get with that. But that's going to be a fun and a very speed sort of a workshop. And it helps a lot. I'll tell you, with the quick studies, it really helps to focus on the more important things you want to focus on. This is something that we tell ourselves all the time: focus on larger shapes, focus on this, focus on that. But it's very hard when you have, like, a whole kind of painting. But when you time yourself, you really know that, okay, this is what I want to capture, and this is going to be the essence of my painting, and then I'm going to focus on those things. So the quick studies really helps to explore composition. How many compositions can you come up with even one photograph? There are like a gazillion of them, and then you focus on different things in those compositions. And one very important thing I want to tell all artists that come to this workshop is we are not going to be making paintings. We are going to be making studies. If the studies come out good and they look good enough to call themselves paintings, then they're paintings. So I don't want anyone to have this pressure that, oh my gosh, this is a painting, because I deal with that myself. And I guess we're more alike in this regard. Also, all students, artists, I would encourage you to work from your own photographs, something that you really love and have been interested in capturing or painting. And questions always welcome. One-on-one attention for everybody, because otherwise you cannot learn. You can keep watching demos and videos all the time, but if you're not told in action what you're doing is, could be done differently, then it does not help. So there will be a lot of one-on-one. And yeah, do you guys have any questions for me?
So I've never painted oil paintings. I've done everything else, but can a beginner come to either of these classes?
Yes, great question. Yes. For a beginner, a limited palette is great when you're starting out. It really strengthens your knowledge of values and color and all of that. And usually if you go to a school, I've never been to an art school, apparently they start with the Zorn palette, which is again, the 3 colors, limited, oh gosh, where did I?
I think you just turned off your video. Yeah.
Can you see?
Yeah, I see you. Yeah.
Yeah, so they start with the limited palette and then they go into the extended palette. But typically for people who have not gone to a school, we get so excited about color, and rightly so. It is colorful, it is enticing. So we start with the extended palette. And then in my case, I started with the extended and then I went back to the limited. And now I love it so much that I just stay with my
what I like about it is that like I can try it without having to buy 1,000 colors.
Yeah,
like, it's very economical and budget. Like, okay, I'm going to try this. I'll buy, the three or 4 colors, and if I don't like it, then it's not, I don't have 20 tubes of paint staring at me.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the limited palette works great for a landscape because there are so many grays in a landscape that it's very easy to mix those grays with the limited palette. Of course, if you want to paint something that's neon and stuff, that's going to be hard. But as far as the landscape is concerned, I think you can do really great with a limited palette.
Thanks for the question, Ali. I have the same question. So I'm painting in acrylics. So this means if I would take your workshop or your class, there is a material list or something that you suggest I should get because I don't have oils.
Yeah. So I'm proficient with oils, but if you know your medium, like I know that acrylics dry really quickly. So if you know how you work, your medium works, then feel free to work with acrylics. There is a supply list. I believe it's on the website, right, Ali?
Yeah, I just put a link. I put a link in the chat. I'll copy and paste the supply list.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it would be maybe a good start with oils if it's a limited palette to try it for the first time, I thought.
Yeah.
Right.
And you learn because, like I said, it's a mindset. It's a way of thinking. You can use that knowledge to then, you can apply that to your extended palette. At the end of the day, every landscape has values and relationships between those values and temperature. Those are the things that make a landscape painting very strong. You study it in limited palette and you can totally apply all of that knowledge to your extended palette, or not. Stick to the limited, like me, whatever.
I just put the supply list in the chat. It's a small supply list.
Yeah, it's just 3 tubes. Oh, one other thing I can tell you is that don't spend too much money on expensive canvas, because if you want to study, you want to paint a lot and you want to make it cheap. So so this is what I buy. I buy this off of Dick Blick, and this is it's a canvas by Fredericks, and these are canvas pads. So these are like 10 sheets of canvas. They are primed already. I think they can also be used for acrylic, but I think they can be used for, acrylics too. So this is what I buy. Like I said, every time I'm painting, I'm making a study. If the study looks good, it becomes a painting. So if I'll paint on this, I'll stick these on the board. Over here, I'll stick these on the board. And if it comes out good, I will then go ahead to stick it on a hardboard panel. Okay, so try to make it economical so you can paint a lot. Of course, if you want to buy the expensive stuff, go for it.
That's good. What size is that?
I was wondering,
Sorry.
Can you recommend any painting groups who meet regularly?
Yeah,
just in the Bay Area. It could be painting or also sketchbook. I'm just looking for more community, especially with this pandemic, something outdoors, and with the weather being so nice now.
There's a group that meets. It's Los Gatos. There are many actually. There's the one in Los Gatos that meets. They meet every Monday. But shoot me an email and I'll give you more details on that. Is that okay?
That's great. Can you share your email in the chat?
I can do it. What's your email, Ria? I can write it down.
It's ria@riakrishnan.com.
Oh, Krishnan.com. I think that's correct.
ria@riakrishnan.com. Yeah, you can send an email. If you have questions about, if something is more confusing in the supply list and you want to just more clarity, shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer.
I just realized that your supply list says an easel, but we have easels. We have all that stuff at PAL, so there's no need. I'll erase that.
Yeah, if you want, like I have my setup that I take outdoors, so I like to take that everywhere with me. If you can use the ones, I think PAL has like a tons of easels, so
We have tons, yeah. So I'm just gonna, so people don't get, they're not intimidated by having to get an easel.
spend on an expensive easel. Yeah, if you don't, and you can use that. Yeah. Yeah, I'll show you a few more paintings. How much time do we have left? Okay, about
yeah.
Okay, let me show you a couple more paintings. All paintings are painted with the limited palette. And then I'll just mix some color paint, and I would like to show you how I, just started with the limited palette, okay? If you have questions in between, feel free to ask, okay? Let me see how to put this thing. Okay. Okay, so these are all painted with the limited palette. You will notice that the colors do tend to be muted, but I love it this way. Compared to, like a bright pink or fuchsia showing through. Let me try to position this thing here. Hold on just a second. You guys can still see?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not this organized every day, guys. I did this for you. Okay, so perfect. Okay, so these are the 3 colors that I use, okay? You'll see a lot more pink colors over here, but this is something I pre-mix. It is my darkest dark. And basically what this is it's all 3 of these, okay? It's all 3 of this, and that's how I get this. These 3, again, I mix, and these are my lighter, muted, lighter values of these. Okay, green is something I pre-mix because in a landscape you need green all the time. This green, again, it's green, it's blue, yellow, and a lot of this. So that's how it keeps the green very cohesive. It keeps it very harmonious. And the other color I mix is an orange, which is just pure. This is the only color I have that does not have my darkest dark. I could mute it if I want to, but I like it to be pure. So this is just cad red light, and I believe this is cadmium lemon. Okay, so if I want to, like I'll start, let's say I'm mixing like a tree or something like that, and I'm starting with my foliage. The other thing we're going to talk about is how to stay in the medium value range and not go towards the extremes of, going too dark or too light. Nothing wrong with that, as long as you maintain your relationships. So that's, I want to show you how you can get like really gorgeous greens without having a viridian or a sap green on your palette, just from these 3. I can take, so this is like my, I don't know, like my big pile of green that I mix every day. I can go back into yellow. Okay, now if I want to lighten it, I'm not going to dip into my white. I am going to dip into either of these. Which one of these is it going to be depends on how warm or cool I want to be. This is my warm, these 2 are my cool. So if I want to warm this and lighten the value, I will go here instead of dipping into my white. I rarely dip into my white. So that's what I'll do. What it does is it maintains the warmth of the color, and I want it to be a little warmer, so I'll add yellow. I'm always thinking warm, cool, and value. It's as simple. So that's my lighter value. If I want to go lighter in this, again, I'm not going to dip into my white. White is the easiest to lighten the value, but I'm going to think in terms of these and maybe a yellow and an orange, thinking in terms of warm and cool again. So I'm going to go, let's say, a little bit of that. And I want to, let's say, warm it a little bit. So you do that. You see how it changes the value and still maintains the warm temperature. So this could be like your you know, the side of the tree that's getting the light on, and this could be a shadow without mixing white. Okay, and you can always, it's hard to just do it with piles because I don't have something, you know, I'm not comparing it to a foreground or a background over here. I'm just mixing piles of paint over here. But when you do it in a landscape, you will see how you compare these two, because you're not going to be just painting the tree where you're painting the shadow of the tree and the light side of the tree. You're also going to be comparing that to your foreground. You're going to compare it to, maybe there's a barn, maybe there's a mountain in the back. So lots of things that are going to be playing into. But to give you an idea of, let's say we are painting distant mountains, and this is my green. It's, as things go into the distance, they become bluer. So I'm going to dip into my blue. And at this time, I know that my trees are going to be a little lighter in value, and they're going to be cooler because they're into the distance. Again, I'm not going to dip into my white, but I'm going to pick one of these. And I want to get that. I want it to be a little red. So,
Wow.
So refrain from, I also don't dip so much into, and these are all like midtones and lights. There's nothing here is super, super dark. Everything is going to be in a mid-value range because we're working with mid-values. Okay, I'm not so much dipping into my darkest dark or my lightest light, which is the white. Those are going to be my lightest light. I rarely dip into this, but if I want to like add like a highlight in the sky, then I'll probably dip into this and mix it with something else. But mainly we're going to work with very, very much midtones, middle value range. So I hope that gives you guys an idea of, you know, what to expect in the workshop.
It's amazing how all that is created just from, you know, 4 tubes of paint.
Yeah, yeah. This is what I wanted to show. Like, see this streak over here. So that's when I'll try to probably dip into my white. All of this white, it's snow, but it still has a little bit of other tones in it. So I'll rarely dip into my pure white per se. Yeah. Do you guys have questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I was just wondering, where you like learned, where you studied, or who you studied with?
Oh, great question. Yeah, so I studied with Scott Christensen. I took an in-person workshop with him, and I traveled to Idaho in his studio, and I spent like good 7 days with him, and that's how I learned. That was my beginning, and I would say that is my school. After that, it has been, I did take a few other workshops with Catherine Statz, and some few others. I was living in Portland at the time and with a few other local artists, but it has been primarily spent in simplifying the limited palette. I did not study the limited palette with Scott. He used to paint with the limited palette, but when I took the workshop, he had his own set of colors, but he did encourage me to work on the limited palette. Yeah, I didn't listen to him, and I went whole extended palette, and then I came back full circle to start to work on my limited palette. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no worries, anytime.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say too, it's your website, it's riakrishnan.com, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot